In the last section, we finished wiring up our create post action creator, and we're now able to create a new post by using our backend API. The next thing we need to work on is to make sure that we can navigate a user back to our list of posts after we have created the new post. So to help us kind of visualize exactly what needs to happen here, let's take a look at a diagram. The general flow here will be a user submits the form. We will validate the form. We will call that onSubmit helper that we created. That onSubmit helper calls our action creator to make the API request. And then here's the key part, we wait. We wait for the API request to complete. And only after the request has completed successfully do we then somehow navigate the user over to our list of posts, where they can now see the new post that was just created. So the big key here is the fact that we want to wait for our API request to be completed before we attempt to initiate any navigation. So that's the big challenge. That's what we have to figure out how to do. So you might be thinking, well, Stephen, navigation isn't that hard. We've been talking about navigation quite a bit by using that link tag right here, right? So we've been using the link tag to navigate around to different components inside of our application. In this case, the link tag is really not appropriate. Remember that the link tag is a React component that is used to generate an anchor tag that renders in the DOM, like in the HTML document. In this case, we don't want to have a link tag be created that the user has to click on to navigate back to the list screen after the post has been created. We want to just automatically navigate the user the instant we know that the post has been created successfully. So we would refer to this as programmatic navigation. We want to automatically navigate the user around our application. The link tag is not for programmatic navigation. It's for navigation that responds to a user clicking on something. To handle programmatic navigation, React Router passes in a big set of props on or into our component that is being rendered by a route. So I want to open up our src index.js file real quick. Inside of here, if you recall, we're making use of this route component right here to show the post new component that we're currently working on. Whenever React Router renders a component, it passes in a whole bunch of different helpers and objects for helping with navigation to this component right here. So because the route is rendering post new, the post new component has access to a bunch of props to help with navigation. The prop that we want to make use of is this.props.history, and more specifically, history.push. If we call push with a route, like so, whenever this line of code right here is executed, we will automatically and instantly navigate back to our big list of posts, because that's what exists at our root route. So this says, hey, go back to the root route of our application. We could also say, maybe take me to this form that I'm already looking at, so post/new. The string right here just needs to match one of the different routes that we defined inside of our application. So if this line right here will navigate us to some other location inside of our application, well, great, that works well. But now challenge number 2, the follow-up to this, is that we want to make sure that we only attempt to do this navigation after the post has been created. And so that's the big challenge. That's the big hard part. How do we only navigate after a post has been created? Before tackling that, let's save this code right here. Let's just save it. Let's run it inside the browser and make sure that we can manually just instantly navigate around. So I'm going to go back to the application. I'll refresh. I'll put in post 3. We'll submit, and the instant I do, we get navigated back to the index route. Now you will notice that because we navigated back to the index route before the post was created, we enter in a kind of race condition where essentially the post is being created at the exact same time that we're fetching our list of posts. And so it's a total 50-50 chance as to whether or not our newly created post will actually show up on this list. So clearly we really do have to wait for the post to be created before we attempt to navigate back here. See, if I refresh now, okay, now here's my post showing up. So clearly we just navigated too soon. Okay, so back over here. So we know that this line of code right here is working the way we expect, but we need to somehow figure out a way to make sure that it only gets called after the post has been created. So let's get through it. We won't do any more. I've been doing a lot of lecturing, so let's just kind of cut right to the chase here and figure out how we're going to do this. We're going to pass a callback function to this action creator right here. So as a second argument, I'm going to pass in a callback function, and then I'm going to move the history.push call inside of that. So now our action creator has this function right here. If the action creator calls this function, it will automatically navigate us back to our list of posts. So let's now change over to our action creator file inside of actions index.js, and we'll go down to create post right here. Let's first start off by receiving this as callback. So this is our callback function. And now we want to make sure that only after this request right here has succeeded, only after we have received this request, or only after the post has been created, do we want to call the callback manually. To do so, we can use a promise, because that is what is returned by axios.post right here. So I'm going to take the semicolon off the end, and then on a new line we'll say .then, and inside of here we'll call the callback. So in practice, make the API request. After it has been successfully completed, execute this function, and all this function does is call the callback that we just passed in. So let's give this a shot now. I'm going to go back over, refresh the page. We'll say post 4. And now when I click submit right here, the order of operations should be the new post is created, we get the response back, and then we navigate over to our list of posts. So I'll submit, and there we go. If you watch very carefully in the request log, you'll see that first request complete, and then instantly you see the page start to change as we go over to our big old list of posts. Because we are fetching the list of posts only after post 4 was created, we of course do correctly see post 4 appear on the screen. Okay, so that is pretty much it for adding a new post. We now have the ability to navigate around. We can create a new post. We can validate inputs. We can cancel, all kind of good stuff. So this is looking pretty darn good. Let's continue with the next step of our application in the next section.